Glad to see you back. And what we have here is a September 1990 copy of Life magazine. And it says how we got to America. Ellis Island reopens and brings our history back to life. It also has Out on a Limb with Jack Nicholson and the pictures of Alfred Eisenstadt. So it sounds kind of interesting. This issue is now 30 years old, if you can believe that. 1990 was 30 years ago. On the back, there's an ad for Virginia Slims, the cigarette that was a very slim cigarette marketed to women. And so let's talk about it. In 1990, I was a kid. I was 16, so I remember it very well. Yo. I remember that too. It doesn't take fancy polysyllabic words to describe mere ultralights. So this was trying to be cool in 1990. Keep in mind this was the time period of In Living Color and sort of the beginnings of, Yo MTV Raps, and the culture was at that point where we were trying to sort of be cool and sort of shrug off the 80s. The president was George Bush. He was elected in 1988. We had him a little bit longer before Clinton came. The internet really wasn't an issue at this point. We were still reading newspapers and magazines. Hence the large size and the slick paper. AT&T, we were using telephones and pagers. We had car phones, but we really didn't have the cell phones, not too much. Only the richest of the rich had car phones, for that matter. So we have some pictures here about America. Marilyn Monroe. I believe that's Ellis Island. I'm trying to figure out how all these intertwine. That looks like Bobby Kennedy. I think this is just sort of a celebration of America issue. Such delicious confusion. This is an ad for General Foods International Coffees, which was came in a little tin. Generally, I mean, this is a variety sampler that came in packets, but my parents bought this every time they went to the grocery store. It came in a little rectangular tin, and it was very fine powder. It was an instant coffee. It was a very milky coffee. I don't think it still exists. With the Keurig and everything, instant coffee really isn't the force it used to be anyway. In the 80s, instant coffee was very popular. Not everyone had a coffee maker. This article is To See Life, to See the World, to Eyewitness Great Events, Moments. And this is Sandstruck. In the desert, the sand comes on huge. Menacing feet, a raging visitor that pauses, scours the earth and moves on. The sandstorms of the Sahara rarely last more than 10 minutes, but this bruiser visited the Sudanese capital of Khartoum for a half hour and then left behind an inch-thick layer of grit before it continued on its way. So this is in Khartoum, and that is a really dramatic picture of a sandstorm. This is Kissing Commies. Oh, what a love it was, a romance from hell that gripped two nations nearly to the point of strangulation. And when the grip relaxed, when Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev and East Germany's Erich Honecker were gone, a rendering of their camaraderie ardor went up on a wall in East Berlin. Better to have loved and lost, much better. This is a mural that was painted The Last Judgment. The tunnel leading to the sacred site filled with worshippers. Then came a breakdown in the ventilating system, then airlessness, then panic. 2 million had come to Mecca on their annual pilgrimage, but 1,426 fewer would go home. Yet faith did not falter, said Saudi Arabia's King Fahd. It was God's will. Oh, my. What dunks the donut? Pudding cups. So get your kids off donuts and other sweet snacks with Del Monte pudding cups, which is a sweet snack, I think. This to me, I'm at that age where I can't eat anything anymore. See, when I was a kid, I could eat anything. I could eat donuts and candy bars, and I had a high metabolism. I ran and I mean, I just burned it all off because I was a skinny kid. When I joined the military, I weighed 113 pounds, but I had a diet of nothing but sugar. But now, if I eat one pudding cup, I mean, I'm gonna have to change my pants. I mean, it's strange what happens to your body. So if you're in your 20s and you're watching this, I just want to forewarn you: enjoy eating whatever you want now because it will go away. It is strange. I have to be on a very, very careful diet now. I eat a lot of salads and stuff. Your body changes. So to me, I might as well just eat the donut because if nowadays for me, if it was a choice between the pudding cup or the donut, I would just eat the donut because they're gonna both do the same thing to me. I mean, that's just life. I hate to be a downer, but that's just what's gonna happen. Here's the pudding cups thing. I want to say. No, it wasn't Del Monte. It was the other brand. The Healthy Choice ones. The guy actually did the scam where he got all of the air miles from the pudding cups, and he ended up being able to fly for free. I think they made a movie about it called Punch Drunk Love with Adam Sandler. But I could have pudding cups on my lunch when I went to school. Somewhere in the city, a July weekend, middle of the day, brothers Eduardo and Maximiliano Vidals are on their way to Brooklyn. 3 men approach. One demands Eduardo's camera. A shot is fired. The camera is stolen, and another chapter in New York's endless tale of blind violence is over. Eduardo would recover, but the city itself still bleeds. That's another interesting thing. When I was growing up, there were a lot of shows like The Equalizer, Death Wish movies with Charles Bronson, and so forth. And the general idea was that New York was this very dangerous place. The first time I went to New York was the 80s, and the second time was in the late 90s. But I know that it's much safer now than it used to be, generally speaking. In the 80s, it was considered very dangerous. And when I was in New York, and I guess it was around 97, I was in New York City. I found it to be... I never had any. I did see some people who were a little sketchy, but in the subway especially. But I didn't really feel in any danger at any point. Let's see. There's a Met ad with Snoopy on it, which is kind of cool because he's like a sphinx. A lullaby. Nearly 200,000 had applied for 6,000 tickets. A satellite hookup would bring the world's 3 greatest tenors into the homes of a billion more. Roman officials rerouted air traffic so jet roar wouldn't mar the concert. And at rehearsal, while Placido Domingo waited, and Jose Carreras sang Luciano Pavarotti. Well, Pavarotti had better things to do. The 3 tenors. Pavarotti was the most famous of the 3. That was a big deal in the late 80s and 90s. And there was a thing, the 3 tenors. It was like I don't know if it was a tour or something, but I certainly remember it. I remember this really well. The ducks. Birds of a similar synthetic substance flock together. I remember all of the ducks with sunglasses. I don't think this would happen nowadays because they would call it pollution. But we still did weird things like that back then. Genuine jewels, only from Franklin heirloom dolls. Diamond, ruby, sapphire, opal, and emerald. $135 each. So these dolls have jewels on the necklaces. This says Tour de China. It took 300,000 men, 15 years to build the Great Wall, and 20 years of solitary planning and dreaming for Kevin Foster to set the wheels of his bicycle on its ancient stones. But in just 6 giddy weeks, traversing 1,175 miles, the 30-year-old Californian had it down cold. You work the uphills and pray for a good downhill. So he rode his bike down the Great Wall of China. Big Taste. Hostess mini muffins. I think there's something like this now, or the equivalent. And a bite-sized muffin. Yeah, another one of those things that I could eat up when I was in the 90s. Painted Desert. Jerseys makes everything more colorful, including you. And look for jerseys labeled whenever you purchase t-shirts and sweats. An interesting ad. Probably wouldn't run today. Aquamarine. Another jerseys ad, and it's showing Marines wearing a shirt that they would not be allowed to wear under any circumstances. Having been in the military and training with Marines, I know if they wore an aquamarine shirt, I don't know what they would do to them. It would probably be severe. Degree. I remember this came out in the 90s. Introducing Degree, the body heat activated antiperspirant. Whenever your body heat rises, Degree turns on extra protection. I don't know how that technology works. I think I bought Degree, and I think it's like pretty much any other deodorant. The picture in the right. Gorbachev is a fit pitcher resenting the USSR for his interior subversive brilliance. Oh yeah, the Soviet Union still existed at this point. And not, the Soviet Union was still in existence, and memory restored for $17 million. Firemen's Fund ensures new look for Ellis Island, where 17 million immigrants stepped ashore. And this is Firemen's Fund. So their ad is playing into the magazine, the cover story of the magazine. I remember the Ellis Island thing was a big deal in 1986. And I think that was because it was the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. So I'm not sure. I mean, this is 4 years later, but I remember in 1986 we were all obsessed with the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. They had cleaned the statue. When I went to New York in 1984, they had scaffolding all around the Statue of Liberty, which was kind of a bummer because I didn't get to see it then. I didn't get to see it until 1997. Reopening the gateway to America. So I guess the deal was in 1990 they were reopening Ellis Island. And that's cool, because that's what it would have looked like if you were an immigrant coming to America at the turn of the century, which is kind of cool. If you watch movies, there's so many movies that, dramatically show that, like The Godfather Part 2. I mean, it's just, all of the people in line with tags on the children and everything. I mean, and our culture here, we're the melting pot. We have this mixture of Italian and Irish and all of these different cultures all blended together, and we have all of these foods that are uniquely American, that are brought over from different places. And we're showing some pictures from Slavic immigrants carrying precious papers like the passport above, climbed to the second floor registry room. An interesting tidbit, my wife's grandparents came from Europe at this time, because my wife is from a village. Her grandfather or great grandfather was from a village in France called Dangelsheim. So we actually went there to see it, and But the funny thing was, is we still have stuff that they brought over. And one of the things they brought over is their pocket change. They had drilled holes in all the coins and they wore their change around their neck, which is interesting that we still have these little. And some really great pictures of the paperwork and photos of the people who came here at that time. The immigrants with the babushkas around their heads, and pictures of the ships that carried them. And wow, this is it's just interesting to think. Another picture. Here they are sitting down for a meal. I'm going to read the caption. On one April day in 1907, the human flood tide peaked at 11,747. The dining room above, packed to capacity, served meals all day. The immigration station, set up to process a few 100,000 a year, and expanded in 20 years into a miniature city on an island, now tripled using landfill in size. A staff of some 700 doctors, nurses, interpreters, matrons, clerks, maintenance men, and night watchmen worked up to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Red Cross, YMCA, Salvation Army, and dozens of other welfare and religious groups served coffee and donuts, proffered and used clothing, helped find luggage, wandering children, and mainland relatives, and even organized concerts and parties. Lillian Davis Keyes was 7 when she came through in 1922 with her mother and brother en route from Kiev to Chicago. The first night they were celebrating Christmas. They had a movie. I never had seen one, and there was Santa Claus, and we got tiny little gifts. All the beauty of Christmas suddenly hit me. She also recalls the dining room. I ate my first hot dog and my first banana there. They were revelations. How exciting for this little kid. That is really kind of cool. And look at the way everyone's dressed. The bowler hat. You see bowler hats, but let me tell you what the bowler hat is. And this is the information I got was when I was in Austin, Texas, about a year ago. I went to a hatting store, and a master hatter works there. He did the hats for Watchmen, for a lot of westerns, a lot of Robert Rodriguez movies, a lot of famous movies. He created the hats for the movies, so he knew a lot about hats. And he told me that the bowler hat was actually the worker's hat. It was the predecessor of the hard hat. It was rounded, so when miners and so forth wore them, debris from the mine would roll off the top of their head. So the wearing of the bowler was the working man's hat, the working class hat. And I never knew that, but I found that really interesting. So the bowler is really the first hard hat. Some faces of immigrants. And just the style dress, the headscarf, the babushkas, what that's called. Sort of the Edwardian hat here, the bowler hat, the Russian fur hat. That looks sort of like a fedora. Another bowler, another kind of Irish-looking headscarf. Wow. Here's an old car ad from introducing a whole new class of American sedan, World Class. The totally new 1991 four-door Regal by Buick. This is when the cars sort of got smoother and more roundy. From when the 80s, all the cars were kind of squared with lots of right angles, and now you started seeing the smoother, more rounded corners on the cars. Ellis Island Blues song, sheet music. See little tags on the kids, so if they got lost, they could be found. Hitachi TV. Look at that. Now that was a heck of a TV for 1990. My goodness. if you had a TV like that in 1990, you had everyone coming over to your house. I mean, you know, the funny thing is it wasn't that long ago. Do you remember when TVs, you had to have about 2 feet behind them to just put them on a table? Now they're all flat and skinny, but back then that thing probably weighed 150 pounds. In the eye of the storm. A year later, Hurricane Hugo's high water is gone, but life is still muddy. I remember Hurricane Hugo. Being an Alabama boy, I've been through a lot of hurricanes. I mean, it's now I'm all over again. That's what this is. Only thing missing is the artillery shells. You telling me I'm normal? Doris cried. You telling me I'm gonna make it? And it's sad. Like, and I can attest to this, being an Alabama boy, that hurricanes always seem to hit us working people the most. It doesn't. I mean, they say that tornadoes aim at trailer parks and hurricanes aim at all of us. You know, it's weird, but that just seems to be the way it is. Visa. And they don't take American Express. Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Performance bicycle shop, Chapel Hill. Sleek lines, sturdy constructions. Cycling's cutting edge. Where cycling goes into high gear. It's just one of the more than 4 million places around the world that accepts Visa, but not American Express. Bugle Boy. There are good reasons to consider self-employment. A complete line of casual clothing for men. And it shows the guy, he's sitting here, he's got his schedule open, he's got his phone out. I'm not exactly sure, he's got a bowl of cereal. I'm not exactly sure what the idea of this is. Slacker, maybe, I don't know. We were getting close to the Nirvana time period. I mean, Nirvana was already playing, but they weren't really well known yet. But I mean, they were getting close to being well known. But that style of shirt with the paisley, that was me. That's how I dressed. Of course, I was a kid too. But a family huddle is under a table. We blew it. The wife thinks we never should have stayed. The power is out. People in ICU could die. Someone has to go out in the hurricane. I'll go, says Dan Dyer. Mr. Miss Texas. Behind every Lone Star beauty queen is an old fat bald man known as Mr. Miss Texas. This year's winner, Susanna Lawrence, was groomed over 4 years by B. Dunn Magnus, opposite the chairman of the Miss Texas pageant, who says he likes to play the part of a dirty old man. Basically, what she does is what I taught her, says. Now, this is a good example of an article that would never be printed today. Not in a million years. This is just dripping with Me Too stuff. I mean, I'm just amazed. I'm sure that this is the only, enjoy this video, because stuff like this is going to be scrubbed off the internet. I assure you. Enjoy watching this, because the times, they are changing, and things like this will not exist. They will be removed. And you can still, touch and read paper. Paper's permanent. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that, my goodness, things have changed. And if you want to see the changes, you're going to have to dig for it or watch my videos. Because I like to read stuff that's at least 20 or 30 years old. Or if not 100 years old. My magazines and newspapers, I go way back as far as I can to discuss the times of. This is just 30 years ago, and look how much things have changed. It's just kind of amazing. I remember when the Miss America pageant was still, even in 1990, that was a big deal. Just like the Oscars were a big deal and the Emmys were a big deal. That's what everyone was tuned to. And now, my understanding is the Oscars and Miss America and all these things are dying. I mean, no one's watching them anymore because, there's so many other things to watch. And we're just not interested. And we're, as a culture, we've just shifted away from these things. It's really interesting to me. You came home again. 10 brothers and sisters were taken from their parents by welfare agents and police. Scattered among foster homes, institutions, and new families, most wandered lost, lonely, and incomplete for 28 years until they finally found one another and realized you can go home again. This is another one of these, kind of like something you'd see on Unsolved Mysteries, like a whole family, they got separated and then they reunited, these are always kind of good stories to read. And this is why I like to have all of these magazines, because you can read this and it just reminds you that these stories can be remembered and maybe we can learn from them. And it's kind of sad to me because not everything, there's not like a big site we can go to that just has an index of all of these. You still have to sort of find them. They get lost in the shuffle. Nobody has the Carlton combinations. Do they still put cigarette ads in magazines? I don't know. Because I don't really look at modern magazines, to tell you the truth. I really don't. I think I do have one down there with Chadwick Boseman, and I wanted to, and I have to look at that and see how much it's changed. Maybe do a comparison. Parker pens, the twisty kind. It's so beautiful. We're afraid some people will miss the point. And she's got her hair done up with the pins. Here we have 3 books, no commitment, no kidding. Oh, I don't believe that for 1 minute. QPB, the book club for people who can't resist a great offer. And, they got the Russia House, they've got Time Life, Fix It Yourself, Bill Moyers, the Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. They put like a price on his head for that. I don't believe it. I don't believe that these clubs were always, you ordered the books, you paid your $3, but they would keep mailing them. Just because they say no commitment doesn't mean that they're still going to keep mailing them to you and leaving the burden of sending them back on you. The Father, the Director, and the Holy Terror. He's Jack Nicholson and you're not. He's 53 years old when this article was done. He's much older now. They're talking about movies. The Terms of Endearment, Prizzy's Honor, Witches of Eastwick, and The Joker and Batman. I think this is probably concurrent with when he was doing Batman, because I think Batman was 1989. So this would be, Jack Nicholson was kind of on top of his game at this point. Batman was a big deal when it came out. It was hugely popular. It was it was like this. Superman came out in the 70s. Superman 2 was kind of a hit, and Superman 3 was kind of a hit, but it dropped after that. There really weren't any superhero movies that made any impression until Batman in 1989. So you could argue that Batman brought back the superhero to stay, because then you had Batman 2, Batman Returns with Michael Keaton. Then you had Batman Forever, which did really well. Then you had Batman and Robin, which still made money, even though it was just hated. And then we kept getting superhero movies again and again. We had Catwoman, we had Daredevil, we had the Fantastic Four, and finally we got Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. And when Spider-Man came out, that was it. Superhero movies were here to stay. Then shortly around the same time as Spider-Man, we had the X-Men with Hugh Jackman, and then before we knew it, we had Iron Man, and then now here's the thing. Now that the Avengers Endgame is over, the challenge is, will people continue to want to watch superhero movies? because it peaked, and there is no more Iron Man, there is no more Captain America. We still have some Guardians of the Galaxy movies, we still have some Ant-Man and some Captain Marvel and a few others, but I think something new will be coming along before too long. And I think what we're going to see is, I remember when Christopher Reeve's Superman came out and it was such a massive hit that people just thought, this will never end. But it ended. And everything comes to an end. Star Wars came to an end. Everything comes to an end. That's all there is to it. Nothing stays forever, nothing lasts forever. A big, long article about Jack Nicholson and Angelica Houston, his longtime companion. Pinball is back. Big, bold, 2-page spread of Pinball. That didn't last very long because there's still pinball. If you go to a big city, you can find a pinball arcade, but you're not going to find it in your average American town or city. You'll find it in a cool place where people appreciate the art and everything of pinball. I went to one in Austin. You can still find them, but I'm sorry, pinball is like, it's a game of the 50s. It really is. When video games came along, pinball was out, and no offense to pinball, I really enjoy the artwork and everything, but it's really boring. Still, they are beautiful machines, but they're boring. Imagine your pet on the cover of Life magazine. Oh boy, pet of me. I would probably do that if I still could. The Enchanted Eye of Eisenstadt. 60 years ago, which would be 90 years ago, he was taking pictures. Wow, that's interesting. I never heard of him, and this is really cool to look at these old photographs almost a century ago. In 1934. It's funny to think. See, when this magazine printed, that was only 56 years ago. That meant that people born in 1934 were still working. Some good pictures, though. Little big man with a camera. I miss the old Life magazines and all of their cool stuff. It's kind of sad that paper magazines, we'll probably see the end of it pretty soon. While I wait for a refrigerator that stops spills cold, Whirlpool has it today. Long Found Friends. The Grim Leaper. I'm just going to read this. 100 years ago, the records show he was on his last legs. An arthritic Frenchman in his mid-20s. Now he's sprinting through the valley of a gallery of death. The curator of the Booth Museum of Natural History in Brighton, England, thought he'd tickle patrons' funny bones by having the stiff skedaddle on the dead run through a macabre collection of skeletons. That's interesting. I would probably dig that. And we get to the end, the Hagar ad. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for hanging out with me. As always, I always enjoy sitting here and having a chat with you. And thanks so much. My channel has really been blowing up lately, and I would have all of you to thank for that. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And please keep doing what you're doing, subscribing and liking and watching my videos and leaving comments. All of that just makes me want to do this more. And I've been doing a lot more videos lately, and the only reason I'm doing more is because you're watching them more, and that means so much to me. I can't even tell you. So thank you, and I'll be back again. Bye.